Moab rebelled against Israel after the death of Ahab. Ahaziah fell down through the lattice in his upper room that was in Samaria and was sick. So he sent messengers and said to them, "Go, inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron, whether I will recover of this sickness." But the angel of Yahweh said to Elijah the Tishbite, "Arise, go up to meet the messengers of the king of Samaria, and tell them, is it because there is no God in Israel that you go to inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron?" So Ahaziah died according to the word of Yahweh which Elijah had spoken. It happened, when Yahweh would take up Elijah by a whirlwind into heaven, that Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Please wait here, for Yahweh has sent me as far as Bethel." Elisha said, "As Yahweh lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you." 50 men of the sons of the prophets went and stood opposite them at a distance, and they both stood by the Jordan. Elijah took his mantle and wrapped it together, and struck the waters, and they were divided here and there, so that they too went over on dry ground. It happened, when they had gone over, that Elijah said to Elisha, "Ask what I shall do for you before I am taken from you." Elisha said, "Please let a double portion of your spirit be on me." He said, "You have asked a hard thing. If you see me when I am taken from you, it shall be so for you, but if not, it shall not be so." It happened, as they still went on and talked, that behold, a chariot of fire and horses of fire separated them, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. Elisha saw it, and he cried, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen." He took up the mantle of Elijah that fell from him, and went back, and stood by the bank of the Jordan. He took the mantle of Elijah that fell from him, and struck the waters, and said, "Where is Yahweh, the God of Elijah?" When he also had struck the waters, they were divided here and there, and Elisha went over. When the sons of the prophets who were at Jericho over against him saw him, they said, "The spirit of Elijah rests on Elisha." They came to meet him, and bowed themselves to the ground before him. The men of the city said to Elisha, "Behold, the situation of this city is pleasant, as my lord sees, but the water is bad, and the land is unfruitful." He said, "Bring me a new jar, and put salt in it." They brought it to him. He went out to the spring of the waters, and threw salt into it, and said, "Thus says Yahweh, I have healed these waters. There shall not be from there any more death or barren land." So the waters were healed to this day, according to the word of Elisha, which he spoke. Now Jehoram, the son of Ahab, began to reign over Israel in Samaria. He did that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh, but not like his father, and like his mother. Mesha, king of Moab, rebelled against the king of Israel. So the king of Israel, the king of Judah, and the king of Edom set out together against Moab. When they had no water for the army, they sought out Elisha. Elisha said, "Thus says Yahweh, make this valley full of trenches. For thus says Yahweh, you shall not see wind, neither shall you see rain, yet that valley shall be filled with water, and you shall drink, both you and your livestock." It happened in the morning that water came by the way of Edom, and the country was filled with water. So Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel. Now there cried a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets to Elisha, saying, "Your servant my husband is dead. The creditor has come to take for himself my 2 children to be slaves." Elisha said to her, "What shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in the house?" She said, "Your handmaid has nothing in the house except a pot of oil." Then he said, "Go, borrow containers from all your neighbors, even empty containers. Don't borrow just a few. Pour out into all those containers." So she poured out. It happened, when the containers were full, that the oil stopped flowing. He said, "Go, sell the oil, and pay your debt, and you and your children live on the rest." It fell on a day that Elisha passed to Shunem, where there was a prominent woman, and she persuaded him to eat bread. She said to her husband, "Behold, I perceive that this is a holy man of God. Please let us make a little room on the wall. Let us set for him there a bed, a table, a chair, and a lampstand. It shall be, when he comes to us, that he shall turn in there." Elisha said, "About this season, when the time comes around, you will embrace a son." When the child was grown, it happened that he fell sick and died. The woman went and called Elisha. He went up and lay on the child, and the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. He called and said, "Take up your son." Then she went in and fell at his feet, and took up her son, and went out. Now Naaman, captain of the army of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master, and honorable, because by him Yahweh had given victory to Syria. He was also a mighty man of valor, but he was a leper. The Syrians had gone out in bands, and had brought away captive out of the land of Israel a little maiden, and she waited on Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "I wish that my lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria. Then he would heal him of his leprosy." So Naaman came with his horses and with his chariots, and stood at the door of the house of Elisha. Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, "Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall come again to you, and you shall be clean." But Naaman was angry, and went away, and said, "Behold, I thought, he will surely come out to me, and call on the name of Yahweh his God. Art Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel?" So he turned and went away in a rage. His servants came near, and spoke to him, and said, "My father, if the prophet had asked, 'You do some great thing,' wouldn't you have done it? How much rather then, when he says to you, 'Wash and be clean'?" Then went he down, and dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God. And his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. He returned to the man of God, he and all his company, and came and stood before him, and he said, "See now, I know that there is no God in all the earth, but in Israel." The sons of the prophet said to Elisha, "See now, the place where we dwell before you is too small for us. Let's go to the Jordan, and each man take a beam from there." But as one was felling a beam, the axe head fell into the water, and he cried and said, "Alas, my master, for it was borrowed." The man of God asked, "Where did it fall?" He showed him the place. He cut down a stick, threw it in there, and made the iron float. He said, "Take it." So he put out his hand and took it. Now the king of Syria was warring against Israel, and the man of God sent to the king of Israel, saying, "Beware that you not pass such a place, for the Syrians are coming down there." The king of Israel sent to the place which the man of God told him. Thus he saved himself there. The heart of the king of Syria was very troubled because of this thing. One of his servants said, "Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom." He sent horses, chariots, and a great army there. They came by night and surrounded the city. When the servant of the man of God had risen early and gone out, behold, an army with horses and chariots was around the city. His servant said to him, "Alas, my master, what shall we do?" He answered, "Don't be afraid, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them." Elisha prayed and said, "Yahweh, please open his eyes, that he may see." Yahweh opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire around Elisha. Elisha said, "Hear the word of Yahweh. Thus says Yahweh, tomorrow about this time a measure of fine flour will be sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel in the gate of Samaria." Now there were 4 leprous men at the entrance of the gate. They said to one another, "Why do we sit here until we die? Now therefore come, and let us go to the army of the Syrians." They rose up in the twilight to go to the camp of the Syrians. When they had come to the outermost part of the camp, behold, there was no man there. For the Lord had made the army of the Syrians to hear a noise of chariots, and a noise of horses, even the noise of a great army. And they said to one another, The king of Israel has hired against us the kings of the Hittites. So they arose and fled in the twilight, and left their tents, and their horses, and their donkeys, even the camp as it was, and fled for their life. So the people went out, and plundered the camp of the Syrians. So a measure of fine flour was sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, according to the word of Yahweh. Now Elisha had said to the woman, whose son he had restored to life, Arise, and go with your household, and stay wherever you can, for Yahweh has called for a famine. It shall also come on the land 7 years. The woman arose, and did according to the word of the man of God. It happened at the 7 years' end, that the woman returned out of the land of the Philistines, and she went out to cry to the king for her house and for her land. So the king appointed to her a certain officer, saying, Restore all that was hers, and all the fruits of the field since the day that she left the land, even until now. In the 5th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, began to reign. He walked in the way of the kings of Israel, as did the house of Ahab, for he had the daughter of Ahab as wife. He did that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh. Elisha the prophet called one of the sons of the prophets, and said to him, Gird up your waist, and take this vial of oil in your hand, and go to Ramoth Gilead. When you come there, find Jehu the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, and go in, and make him arise up from among his brothers, and carry him to an inner room. Then take the vial of oil, and pour it on his head, and say, Thus says Yahweh, I have anointed you king over Israel. So the young man poured the oil on his head, and said to him, Thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel, I have anointed you king over the people of Yahweh, even over Israel. You shall strike the house of Ahab your master, that I may avenge the blood of my servants the prophets. So Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, conspired against Joram. Jehu drew his bow with his full strength, and struck Joram between his arms, and the arrow went out at his heart, and he sank down in his chariot. When Jehu had come to Jezreel, Jezebel heard of it, and she painted her eyes, and adorned her head, and looked out at the window. As Jehu entered in at the gate, she said, Do you come in peace? He lifted up his face to the window and said, Who is on my side? Who? 2 or 3 eunuchs looked out at him. He said, Throw her down. So they threw her down. When he had come in, he ate and drank, and he said, See now to this cursed woman, and bury her, for she is a king's daughter. They went to bury her, but they found no more of her than the skull, and the feet, and the palms of her hands. This was the word of Yahweh, which he spoke by his servant Elijah the Tishbite, saying, The dogs shall eat the flesh of Jezebel. Now Ahab had 70 sons in Samaria. Jehu wrote letters and sent to Samaria to the rulers of Jezreel, saying, Take the heads of the men your master's sons, and come to me to Jezreel by tomorrow this time. So Jehu struck all that remained of the house of Ahab in Jezreel, with all his great men, and his familiar friends, and his priests, until he left him none remaining. Jehu gathered all the people together, and said to them, Ahab served Baal a little, but Jehu will serve him much. Now therefore call to me all the prophets of Baal, all his worshippers, and all his priests. Let none be lacking. But Jehu did it in subtlety, intending that he might destroy the worshippers of Baal. Jehu said, Sanctify a solemn assembly for Baal. They proclaimed it. It happened, as soon as he had finished offering the burnt offering, that Jehu said to the guard, Go in and kill them, let none escape. So they struck them with the edge of the sword. Thus Jehu destroyed Baal out of Israel. However, Jehu didn't depart from the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, with which he made Israel to sin. Now when Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she arose and destroyed all the royal family. But Jehosheba, the daughter of King Joram, sister of Ahaziah, took Joash, the son of Ahaziah, and stole him away from among the king's sons who were slain, even him and his nurse, and put them in the bedroom, and they hid him from Athaliah, so that he was not slain. He was with her, hidden in the house of Yahweh 6 years. Athaliah reigned over the land. In the 7th year Jehoiada sent and fetched the captains over hundreds, and brought them to him into the house of Yahweh. He showed them the king's son. He brought out the king's son, and put the crown on him, and gave him the testimony. And they made him king, and anointed him, and they clapped their hands, and said, "Long live the king!" When Athaliah heard the noise of the people, she came to the people into the house of Yahweh, and she looked, and behold, the king stood by the pillar, as the tradition was, and the captains and the trumpets by the king, and all the people of the land rejoiced, and blew trumpets. Then Athaliah tore her clothes, and cried, "Treason! Treason!" They seized her, and she was put to death. Jehoiada made a covenant between Yahweh and the king and the people, that they should be Yahweh's people. All the people of the land went to the house of Baal, and broke it down. His altars and his images broke they in pieces thoroughly, and killed Mattan, the priest of Baal, before the altars. Jehoash was 7 years old when he began to reign. Jehoash did that which was right in the eyes of Yahweh all his days, in which Jehoiada the priest instructed him. Jehoash said to the priests, "All the money of the holy things that is brought into the house of Yahweh, let the priests take it to them, and let them repair the breaches of the house, wherever any breach shall be found." So they gave the money that was weighed out into the hands of those who did the work, and they repaired the house of Yahweh. In the 23rd year of Joash, the son of Ahaziah, king of Judah, Jehoahaz, the son of Jehu, began to reign over Israel in Samaria, and reigned 17 years. He did that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh, and followed the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, with which he made Israel to sin. He didn't depart from there. The anger of Yahweh was kindled against Israel, and he delivered them into the hand of Hazael, king of Syria, continually. Jehoahaz begged Yahweh, and Yahweh listened to him, for he saw the oppression of Israel. Now Elisha was fallen sick of his sickness of which he died. And Joash, the king of Israel, came down to him, and wept over him, and said, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen." Elisha said to him, "Take bow and arrows." He took bow and arrows. He said to the king of Israel, "Put your hand on the bow." He put his hand on it, and Elisha laid his hands on the king's hands. He said, "Open the window eastward," and he opened it. Then Elisha said, "Shoot," and he shot. He said, "Yahweh's arrow of victory, even the arrow of victory over Syria for you, shall strike the Syrians in Aphek until you have consumed them." Elisha died, and they buried him. Now the bands of the Moabites invaded the land at the coming in of the year. It happened, as they were burying a man, that behold, they saw a band of raiders, and they cast the man into the tomb of Elisha. As soon as the man touched the bones of Elisha, he revived, and stood up on his feet. In the 2nd year of Joash, son of Joahaz, king of Israel, Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Judah, began to reign. He did that which was right in the eyes of Yahweh, yet not like David his father. The high places, however, were not taken away. They conspired against him in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish, but they sent after him to Lachish, and killed him there. Azariah his son reigned in his place. In the 27th year of Jeroboam king of Israel, Azariah son of Amaziah king of Judah began to reign. He did that which was right in the eyes of Yahweh, according to all that his father Amaziah had done. Yahweh struck the king, so that he was a leper to the day of his death, and lived in a separate house. Jotham, the king's son, was over the household, judging the people of the land. Azariah slept with his fathers, and Jotham his son reigned in his place. In the meantime, the kings of Israel followed one another in quick succession, many of them through conspiracy and bloodshed, each doing that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh, and not departing from the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, with which he made Israel to sin. In the days of Pekah, king of Israel, came Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, and took the land, and carried the people captive to Assyria. So Israel began to be diminished. In the 17th year of Pekah, the son of Remaliah, Ahaz, the son of Jotham, king of Judah, began to reign. Ahaz was 20 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. He didn't do that which was right in the eyes of Yahweh his God, like David his father. But he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, yes, and made his son to pass through the fire, according to the abominations of the nations, whom Yahweh cast out from before the children of Israel. He sacrificed and burnt incense in the high places, and on the hills, and under every green tree. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, Hoshea, the son of Elah, began to reign in Samaria over Israel for 9 years. He did that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh, yet not as the kings of Israel who were before him. Against him came up Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, and Hoshea became his servant, and brought him tribute. The king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to So king of Egypt, and offered no tribute to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up, and bound him in prison. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land, and went up to Samaria, and besieged it 3 years. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria, and carried Israel away to Assyria, and placed them in Hala, and on the Habor, the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. It was so, because the children of Israel had sinned against Yahweh, their God, who brought them up out of the land of Egypt from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other gods, and walked in the statutes of the nations whom Yahweh cast out from before the children of Israel. The children of Israel did secretly things that were not right against Yahweh, their God, and they built high places, and set up pillars and Asherim, and served idols, of which Yahweh had said to them, "You shall not do this thing." Yet Yahweh testified to Israel and to Judah by every prophet, saying, "Turn from your evil ways." Notwithstanding, they would not hear, but hardened their neck. They rejected his statutes and his covenant that he made with their fathers. Therefore Yahweh was very angry with Israel, and removed them out of his sight. There was none left but the tribe of Judah only. Now it happened in the 3rd year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, that Hezekiah, the son of Ahaz, king of Judah, began to reign. He did that which was right in the eyes of Yahweh, according to all that David his father had done. He removed the high places, and broke the pillars, and cut down the Asherah, and he broke in pieces the bronze serpent that Moses had made, for in those days the children of Israel burned incense to it. He trusted in Yahweh, the God of Israel, so that after him was none like him among all the kings of Judah, nor among them who were before him. For he held fast to Yahweh. He didn't depart from following him, but kept his commandments. Yahweh was with him. Wherever he went forth, he prospered. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah, and took them. The king of Assyria sent his officers with a great army against Jerusalem, and they spoke defiant words against Hezekiah and against Yahweh, seeking to make the people afraid. But the people held their peace, and answered him not a word, for the king's commandment was, "Don't answer him." It happened, when King Hezekiah heard the threats of Assyria, that he tore his clothes, and covered himself with sackcloth, and went into the house of Yahweh. He sent Eliakim and Shebna and the elders of the priests, covered with sackcloth, to Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amoz. Isaiah said to them, "Thus you shall tell your master, thus says Yahweh, don't be afraid of the words that you have heard, with which the servants of the king of Assyria have blasphemed me. Behold, I will put a spirit in him, and he shall hear news, and shall return to his own land. I will cause him to fall by the sword in his own land." Hezekiah received the letter from the hand of the messengers, and read it. Then Hezekiah went up to the house of Yahweh, and spread it before Yahweh. Hezekiah prayed before Yahweh, and said, "Yahweh, the God of Israel, who is enthroned above the cherubim, you are the God, even you alone, of all the kingdoms of the earth. You have made heaven and earth. Incline your ear, Yahweh, and hear. Open your eyes, Yahweh, and see. Now therefore, Yahweh our God, save us, I beg you, out of his hand, that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you are Yahweh God alone." Then Isaiah the son of Amoz sent to Hezekiah, saying, "Thus says Yahweh the God of Israel, concerning Sennacherib king of Assyria, this is the word that Yahweh has spoken therefore. Thus says Yahweh concerning the king of Assyria, he shall not come to this city, nor shoot an arrow there, nor come before it with shield. By the way that he came, by the same shall he return, and he shall not come to this city, says Yahweh. For I will defend this city to save it, for my own sake, and for my servant David's sake." It happened that night that the angel of Yahweh went out and struck in the camp of the Assyrians 185,000. When men arose early in the morning, behold, these were all dead bodies. So Sennacherib king of Assyria departed, and went and returned, and lived at Nineveh. In those days Hezekiah was sick to death. Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amoz, came to him, and said to him, "Thus says Yahweh, set your house in order, for you shall die and not live." Then he turned his face to the wall, and prayed to Yahweh, saying, "Remember now, Yahweh, I beg you, how I have walked before you in truth and with a perfect heart, and have done that which is good in your sight." Hezekiah wept bitterly. Before Isaiah had gone out, the word of Yahweh came to him, saying, "Turn back, and tell Hezekiah, thus says Yahweh, the God of David your father, I have heard your prayer, I have seen your tears. Behold, I will heal you. I will add to your days 15 years. Hezekiah slept with his fathers, and Manasseh his son reigned in his place. Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 55 years in Jerusalem. He did that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh, after the abominations of the nations whom Yahweh cast out before the children of Israel. For he built again the high places which Hezekiah his father had destroyed, and he reared up altars for Baal, and made an Asherah, as did Ahab king of Israel. Manasseh seduced them to do that which is evil, more than the nations whom Yahweh destroyed before the children of Israel. Josiah was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. He did that which was right in the eyes of Yahweh, and walked in all the way of David his father, and didn't turn aside to the right hand or to the left. It happened in the 18th year of King Josiah, that the king sent Shaphan the scribe to the house of Yahweh to oversee the repair of the house. Hilkiah the high priest said to Shaphan the scribe, "I have found the book of the law in the house of Yahweh." Shaphan read it before the king. It happened, when the king had heard the words of the book of the law, that he tore his clothes. The king commanded, saying, "Go inquire of Yahweh for me, and for the people, and for all Judah, concerning the words of this book that is found. For great is the wrath of Yahweh that is kindled against us, because our fathers have not listened to the words of this book." The king sent, and they gathered to him all the elders of Judah and of Jerusalem. The king went up to the house of Yahweh, and all the men of Judah and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with him. He read in their ears all the words of the book of the covenant, which was found in the house of Yahweh. The king stood by the pillar, and made a covenant before Yahweh, to walk after Yahweh, and to keep his commandments, and his testimonies, and his statutes, with all his heart and all his soul, to confirm the words of this covenant that were written in this book. And all the people stood to the covenant. The king commanded that they remove all the vessels that were made for Baal, and for the Asherah, and for all the army of the sky, and he burned them. He broke down the houses of the idolaters that were in the house of Yahweh. He defiled Topheth, that no man might make his son or his daughter to pass through the fire. Like Josiah, there was no king before him who turned to Yahweh with all his heart, and with all his soul, and with all his might, according to all the law of Moses. Neither after him arose there any like him. In his days, Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, went up against the king of Assyria to the river Euphrates, and King Josiah went against him, and Pharaoh Necho killed him at Megiddo. His servants carried him in a chariot dead from Megiddo, and brought him to Jerusalem, and buried him in his own tomb. In his days, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up, and Jehoiakim became his servant 3 years. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to the city, while his servants were besieging it. And Jehoiachin, the king of Judah, went out to the king of Babylon. He carried out from there all the treasures of the house of Yahweh, and the treasures of the king's house. And he carried away all Jerusalem, and all the princes, and all the mighty men of valor, even 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen and the smiths. None remained, except the poorest sort of the people of the land. It happened in the 9th year of Zedekiah's reign that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came against Jerusalem with all his army, and encamped against it, and they built forts against it, around it. So the city was besieged. The famine was severe in the city, so that there was no bread for the people of the land. Then a breach was made in the city, and the men of war fled by night. They pursued after the king, and overtook him, and all his army was scattered from him. In the 5th month, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem. He burnt the house of Yahweh, and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, even every great house, he burnt with fire. All the army of the Chaldeans broke down the walls around Jerusalem. The columns of brass that were in the house of Yahweh, the bronze sea that was in the house of Yahweh, the Chaldeans broke in pieces and carried the brass to Babylon. So Judah was carried away captive out of his land. It happened in the 37th year of the captivity of Jehoiachin, king of Judah, that evil Merodach, king of Babylon, in the year that he began to reign, lifted up the head of Jehoiachin, king of Judah, out of prison. And he spoke kindly to him, and set his throne above the throne of the kings who were with him in Babylon. He took off his prison garments. Jehoiachin ate bread before him continually all the days of his life. For his allowance, there was a continual allowance given him from the king, every day a portion, all the days of his life.